Okay, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. It's 6 a.m. here in California. I got my coffee ready to go. So what we are going to talk about today is we'll look at the state of the blockchain security in the year 2021. We'll look back at the past year, we'll predict the future, or try to gain insights, the indicators that we saw in the past. And we'll talk about the different opportunities to build a stronger and more secure community and also a financial system. So with that, like the whole cryptocurrency industry reminds me of the gold rush in California that was happening in mid-19th century. If you're not familiar, gold was discovered in California around 1848, and people just rushed in after they heard the news. 300,000 people from all over the world just jumped on the ships, sailed over to San Francisco, that's my hometown, and went off digging. If you walk around San Francisco, you actually can see on the streets a whole bunch of signs basically saying like there's a ship that was abandoned and buried right underneath city streets. So cryptocurrency industry is very similar in that regard, where you have people abandoning their previous jobs, livelihoods, and all going all in into cryptocurrency trading, DeFi, investing, and so on. Now, you can imagine that, so taking San Francisco as an example, the town went from population of 200 to 36,000 in just a few years. Not all the folks that moved to San Francisco were the nice, hardworking folks. It also, this whole rush attracted criminals and scammers. There was very little law enforcement at that time. So the gold rush era that you can read about is also marked by a lot of lawlessness. There were duels in the streets. People were going after each other. There was public hangings, jail breakouts, vigilantism because there was no police. So it got pretty wild. Blockchain security today is kind of like that, where there are very few companies, security companies, that can protect folks who are actually building and developing and trying to change the financial system. So this is something I hope that will change in the future, where we are going to have just as mature security ecosystem that we enjoy in web application security and other fields. In case we have not met, my name is Peter Kacherginsky, and I care about blockchain security for a variety of reasons. One, it is my full-time job, so I'm a blockchain security engineer at Coinbase, where I look at different blockchains and smart contracts, try to secure them, try to monitor to make sure that the exchange remains safe. I'm also personally vested in this field because I think there's a lot of benefit that can come out of this. There's a lot of things that the society and humanity as a whole can benefit from this, from cryptocurrencies. So protecting it and making sure that the open financial system that we envision actually happens is my top priority. In the past, I've also worked as a malware reverse engineer, penetration tester at the Federal Reserve System. And I also publish the newsletter called Blockchain Threat Intelligence, which I'll discuss in a bit. So first, let's define the field. What is that? What is this blockchain security field? Well, it's a brand new security field. Its mission is to secure and defend the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And there's a lot of components. So we can talk about blockchain protocols, consensus mechanisms, smart contract security, this is big this year, key storage and exchange security practices. On the law enforcement side, we have blockchain investigations and many other topics. So if you want to visualize the whole field, you can see this interaction between exchanges who are storing assets for the users, exchanges relying on cold and hot storage to keep the funds safe. We have users who are on their own. They can interact directly with assets or DeFi, and they rely on the safety of wallets. Assets themselves, they have a variety of components. They interact with smart contracts, node software to get the latest state, and of course, DeFi, which is which can interact with users directly, and it relies on smart contract infrastructure that it's built on. And now picture for a minute how all of this is getting attacked from all different directions. Exchanges are getting hacked, users are getting phished, DeFi applications, they are getting compromised assets, they rely on blockchains, which also have issues. So we'll take this graph and we'll take it apart slowly, piece by piece. This brings us to the theme for this presentation. If you're familiar with the movie The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, this is a new frontier, and the frontier of cryptocurrency, and we'll explore the growing field of blockchain security by talking about the good that we have in this field, all the people who are building and creating new things. We'll talk about the bad, like all the incidents and all the hacks that are happening, and of course the ugly, who are the perpetrators behind those incidents. So with that, let's start with the bad. So let's first talk about all of the disasters, hacks that are happening on a daily basis. So for the last year, I tracked about $500 million worth of loss in a variety of incidents. The number actually is a lot larger. So if we consider things like Ponzi schemes, ransomware, cryptojacking, the amount is actually more in the billions. But I want to focus more on what makes blockchain security incidents unique, as opposed to criminals simply using cryptocurrencies in more traditional schemes. So the breakdown is as follows. So on the exchange side, we are at $310 billion lost. That's definitely an increase. We'll talk more about that. On the DeFi side, this came out of nowhere for 2020. We're at more than $230 billion lost in a variety of different incidents, hacks, scams, and so on. On the blockchain side, blockchain, individual, and wallets, they constitute only much smaller pieces. So that's basically how we're going to follow our discussion. So let's talk about exchange and crypto business incidents. So as I mentioned, $310 million were lost last year. The year started, if you saw my previous DEF CON talk, there were existing trends which held true for the rest of the year, and they appear to be holding this year as well. Attackers are going after PII. PII is personally identifiable information, so your email addresses, your home addresses, phone numbers, and so on. So after after 2020, we saw BlockFi, CoinCheck, BuyUcoin, CoinSquare, and others. They all reported a variety of PII being stolen. And then, of course, the whole point of hacks in many cases is just to get some kind of financial profit. So we have two themes here. On one side, we have external threats, which are Etherbase, Together, and a few other exchanges that had their hot wallets compromised. And the losses there were relatively small. So we're talking about $1 million to maybe up to 5.4 in Etherbase. And then we have a variety of insider threats. So we have Kasha Exchange, where employee laptop was not secured correctly. So we'll discuss that more in the threat actor description. Shapeshift had $1 million stolen as an insider threat. So the year was going pretty well. The exchange security looked pretty well until we had a few big ones. So one crypto business, Ledger, reported around mid-year that they had a compromise. They didn't fully say like how big it was, how bad it was. Only later we found out that more than 1 million emails and 292,000 detailed customer pieces of data were stolen across 2 separate incidents. So the Ledger database, we only found out about it because it was actually leaked on a hacker forum, and that basically started one of the largest phishing campaigns and later even physical attacks against cryptocurrency holders. Can you imagine what evildoers can do when they have hundreds of thousands of home mailing addresses and phone numbers and full names for individuals who are known to be cryptocurrency holders. Not to be outdone, North Korean Lazarus Group managed to hack KuCoin exchange and steal $281 million. Recall that out of $281 million, actually the large chunk of the total 310 million lost. What was interesting about this hack is that 84% of the stolen funds were actually recovered. And that's a fascinating thing, because how could they do this? How did they recover it? Well, it turns out that the majority of stolen assets were smart contracts. And unlike a lot of blockchains, or most blockchains, as we'll discuss later, asset issuers have a lot of power in what they can do with them. So KuCoin was able to convince a lot of the asset issuers to basically either upgrade their contracts and specifically blacklist attackers' addresses and mint those funds to compensate KuCoin, or if smart contracts had specific functionality to blacklist addresses or confiscate funds, they were all able to cooperate with the exchange and recover and return those funds. So this is kind of unprecedented, right? What's the incentive model here? Are asset issuers really on the hook to compensate exchanges who were hacked? Is that a goodwill action, or is it contractual obligations? It's unclear, but it's fascinating to watch. On the other hand, and this is more unfortunate, so the incidents that we discussed so far were, they're all in the digital domain. Worst case, developers will lose sleep for the next few months. They will spend they'll drink a lot of coffee, they'll do a lot of investigation, forensic analysis. Flying Atom was different. Flying Atom is an exchange in Poland that had a physical incident. $120,000 were stolen after armed attackers broke into the physical building of the exchange, injured 2 employees, and I guess they figured that the exchange has some funds, which surprisingly did. It was storing gold on premises. Physical threat is something that is not often considered in exchange security, but it is part of the overall model, though. So let's gain some insights. Like what are the trends and things that we see here? Are exchanges getting more secure? Last time I gave the stock, yes, I was definitely saying that, yeah, they were getting secure. The number of incidents going down, monetary damage. Well, the number of incidents did go up. It practically doubled since 2019. Monetary damage, with a caveat that most of the damage was done by a single hack of KuCoin, it did go up. If not for this one incident, it would actually be improving, but the KuCoin hack was big. It is an interesting trend to see exchanges working with asset issuers to refund funds. It brings up interesting questions about liabilities. Attackers are getting more creative. A few of the hacks last year involved attackers not even going after infrastructure of the exchange itself, but they took over DNS panels on GoDaddy to just redirect users to some malicious website and collect their data. And of course, the trend continues that the attackers are going beyond just stealing hot wallets. They're very happy with just getting as much PII and maybe using them in phishing attacks later on. Last but not least, insider and physical threats are just as important to overall exchange security as securing their infrastructure and hot wallets and cold storage. So let's talk about the big one, DeFi. DeFi incidents last year constituted about 230 million loss. Again, like looking at the first half of the year, we could immediately see, okay, this year is going to be pretty bad. Like immediately we had BZX got hacked a couple times. Uniswap had 300K drained, and on again. So you could kind of see that this is going to be the new trend. I did not expect to see what's going to come next. In the second half of the year, double the amount, double the number of incidents were getting hit one after another after another. So you could see, like I highlighted the month of November. it was just in a single month. I remember when I was writing a newsletter, every single day there was news of, okay, there's another project that got compromised. What is the bug? Reentrancy. You start seeing patterns evolve over and over. Weak Oracle attack. The numbers continued growing one after another. We started with a few 100,000 lost to millions and millions. So one particular month, it was, I'll just call it Bloody November. It was just, in a single month, 76 million were stolen, like with more than a dozen incidents. Every other day, there was something new. This year is not looking as well either. We're just a few months in. We're already $63 million lost in different hacks, and the patterns keep on repeating. So what are they? What are those incidents, and what do we keep seeing over and over again? Well, for one, I guess DeFi projects were not prepared to expand how they develop their software to new threats that appear. Like they needed to collect price data from somewhere. So they started implementing oracles. But if they implement it in an incorrect way, those price oracles could be manipulated. And that was the case with Warp Finance and Harvest Finance and others. And that would result in attackers being able to buy something for the cheap. Arbitrage and price slippage, Saddle Finance, Hedging Options, and others found opportunities to quickly extract value with flash loans, which I'll come back to in a sec. Composability attacks. There are some interactions which people just could not predict. So if you imagine that DeFi is all about the money Legos, it's very hard. The complexity of it becomes exponential when you start interacting with a different project and it exhibits some behavior which you could never even predict yet. So that was the case with Uniswap, IMBTC, where they didn't know, like, oh, wow, how is this token different? How could this cause issues? Logic errors, they mostly exhibit themselves as money printing bugs. So that was the case with 88MPH, Cover Protocol, Pickle, BZX, and so on. And then, of course, it's funny to call them traditional smart contract vulnerabilities because the whole field exists for just a few years. But reentrancy and bad math issues, they keep on popping up just as well. Last but not least, there's a common misconception that flash loans is a vulnerability. It's not really, it's just a feature, right? It allows attackers to make their hacks that much more powerful, that much more damaging by doing something that normally would be possible with if you're a whale and you had large amounts of assets. So it's just a feature. It's not a bug. On the other hand, not on the more optimistic side, I guess, only half of the incidents that I tracked last year resulted in monetary loss. And the reason why is that a lot of the asset issuers, they were actually able to figure out that they had vulnerabilities through either themselves or they had third-party reports. They scrambled to shut down, upgrade, sometimes actually hack their own contracts with the vulnerabilities before someone else could, but they were able to recover. So Whitehead Hackers, this is just from last week. So there were 4 different incidents, 4 different vulnerabilities reported to these projects. So Primitive got a heads up from DDub and Immunify that they had a vulnerability. They quickly hacked their own contracts and recovered the funds. Sam CZ started looking into NFTs, and the big project Hashmask had a vulnerability that they patched. 4tube, similar. Dexter, that's a Dex on the Tezos platform, also had a vulnerability reported to them, and they had to hack themselves. So there's not everything is bad. Bug bounties work. So some insights. One, complex coding interaction between DeFi components. They create these new classes of bugs, which are fascinating to watch. We're going to see more of them. So 230 million stolen, though. That's if we look back at what was happening just this year. So this year, in just 2 months, we had $60 million lost. So if we extrapolate that, if this is going to be the trend, we're probably going to double that amount in 2021. Bug bounties work. Responsible disclosure works. That needs to grow. And then it's going to be interesting to see more unique smart contracts getting attacked. So NFTs are probably next. We should be seeing more hacks there because more and more people are deploying those and making more complex interactions. So they're likely to get attacked as well. So if you think back to late 1990s, early 2000s web application security, we're kind of in the same state with DeFi security right now. Back then, there were no tools like Burp Proxy or methodologies like OWASP. There were very few web security shops or bug bounty programs. That was unheard of. So we're kind of in the same state, like it's just only the beginning of it. So we're likely going to see it evolve, and it's going to be painful, but we're going to learn on our mistakes. So this was an interesting article that I found the other day from CGI Security. It's an old school web or AppSec resource where they were drawing analogies of this field from 20 years ago. So we're basically in the year 2000 of DeFi security. Let's talk about blockchains. So everything that we discuss right now, DeFi and all of that, that still relies on layer one blockchains. So we're talking about Ethereum, Bitcoin, Tezos, and so on. $20 million were lost in a variety of different incidents on the blockchain space. So we have our usual suspects, 51% attacks. So Bitcoin Gold and Ethereum Classic, they were basically getting hacked over and over again. Ethereum Classic in particular, in a single month of August, they got attacked 3 different times. Bitcoin Gold was interesting in that a NiceHash miners, and NiceHash, if you're not familiar, you can rent hash power capacity to be able to profit. Some attackers use it to perform 51% attacks. So one of those miners notified Bitcoin Gold to tell them, hey, there's about to be an attack going against you, which allowed Bitcoin Gold to quickly create a checkpoint, which they secretly distributed among miners. So a checkpoint basically invalidates a single block or pins a single block hash to make sure that this is the state of truth. This essentially locked the attacker's chain out. So by the time that they announced it and released their secret chain, it was simply ignored. If you want to learn more about this, let me know. I can talk more about how 51% attacks work. On the Ethereum Classic side, it was just fascinating to see just how large how many blocks were orphaned. So we started with 29 block reorg in January. By August, we were looking at 7,000 plus block reorgs. At that time, it seemed absolutely massive. Like these are multiple days worth of blocks getting expunged. And that was fine until this year, last week, Verge 51% attack happened. And that amount went from 7,000 to 560,000. So this was 200 days worth of blockchain simply getting erased. The team was able to respond to it with the usual approach. So they created a hard fork, they put in a checkpoint, distributed, but it's not clear if there were any double spends. Most likely there were, and what the damage was. Another interesting blockchain network incident is the Firecoin, used to be called Zcoin. And it's not so much because of how large the reorg was. It was only 360 blocks were orphaned, or the amount double spent, but it's the ability by the blockchain to freeze or lock attackers' funds. This is interesting. Normally blockchains do not have this capability. If you told someone like Bitcoin can freeze an account, that would raise hell. Not only that, Firecoin was also able to, they started a voting system and they voted in to compensate Binance that got double spent for that amount. So what they did is they once again created a hard fork where they allowed one single transaction to go through without verification. So you don't have to do minor checkpoints and all of that stuff. And they were able to get that money back and mint more for Binance. So it brings up, again, an interesting point where who's liable here? Technically, it is on Firo that they were 51% attacked, but I guess it creates an interesting precedent for asset issuers, again, compensating exchanges for their losses. So if we were to get some insights so far, proof of work coins, if you can rent GPU hash power to mine proof of work coins, they will continue getting 51% tax. There's no going around getting ASICs and being the dominant asset within the ASIC class, within the hash class. Bitcoin Gold working with miners to secretly deploy checkpoints is a interesting pattern. Maybe there's more room for threat intelligence trying to detect 51% attacks before they even happen. The common approach to security is checkpoints and hard forks. That's basically happened in most of the major incidents. And will blockchains be liable to compensate exchanges that hacked? We'll see. Like, this is a new trend. So seeing a few questions come in. Are new blockchains more vulnerable to 51% attacks? It depends. Like, if they rely on proof of work chains and they chose a hashing algorithm, which is commonly used, or you can easily rent GPU capacity for it, yeah, probably are. Which is why a lot of newer blockchains, they go after proof of stake. Let's talk about some more interesting incidents. These go beyond this common pattern of, the rent hash power, 51% double spend, done, next. One that happened last year was Steemit. And this one was interesting because it's a proof of stake algorithm, and those are vulnerable too, but they're vulnerable not by someone aggregating or renting hash power capacity. They are vulnerable to folks that can accumulate large amount of the assets so they can make staking decisions. In this case, multiple exchanges colluded to basically kick out all of the existing validator nodes and put in validators that they controlled. So this was first of a kind proof of stake attack. Ethereum, mempool manipulation, that was interesting in regards to that. They weren't really targeting Ethereum as a coin itself. They were targeting MakerDAO. They were targeting higher level protocols. By causing congestion and manipulating mempool, they were able to issue a whole bunch of different liquidation transactions on the MakerDAO auctions for basically nothing. Bitcoin Cash ABC is unique. So if you're not familiar, Bitcoin Cash split off from Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin Cash itself split off into a BSV, and then later on Bitcoin Cash ABC after they had disagreements. Well, someone was not too happy with that split, so they launched a griefing attack where they 51% attacked the coin, and they were not looking for any personal profit. They were basically trying to shut down the network, even at their personal loss. So that attack was happening for a few weeks until the attacker gave up. The last but not least is the Monera Sybil attack, where someone tried to basically de-anonymize the network. The attempt failed, but it's kind of interesting because the attack happened within months after US Treasury announced a bounty for any shop that can de-anonymize Monero, and a few of the blockchain analytics companies started publishing papers on exactly how to do that, or their approaches to it. So some insights on the blockchain incidents. The Steemit attack, shows us the first real example of proof of stake attacks and how it's likely going to play out in the future. So we're probably going to see exchanges. We're probably going to see whales collaborating together in order to target the network. It's actually getting more creative. So mempool manipulation. Not all attackers are financially motivated. Some people could be just angry or have some other agenda. And then Monero side, if this was indeed an attack performed as a demo or a research project that came out of the bounty that was put in by US Treasury, this could probably be the first example of a state-sponsored attack against a blockchain. So food for thought there. Blockchain software incidents. So the total amount stolen as a result of someone targeting the underlying software operating all the blockchains is $6.7 million. So there were a variety of incidents that we saw on testnet. So people are catching the bugs early on. Filecoin and Solana had pretty nasty bugs that they caught early on. Tendermint just sees denial of service bugs. pop up every few months. The two on the right, they're probably more concerning. So Ethereum Parity and Ethereum Get vulnerabilities. These are both very well-established projects. So on the Parity side, a denial of service bug knocked out about 13% of the network later last year. And on the Get side, we had an older version, which was silently patched but not announced to that there was a vulnerability there, also ended up knocking out large portions of the network, especially like major projects which were running older versions, older vulnerable versions like Infura, for which a lot of the projects rely on. So this is an interesting lesson of should critical vulnerabilities be silently patched? What if someone discovers them? Should you approach it in more traditional sense where you announce it to the whole world and tell people that you need to patch as quickly as possible? So there's some projects that prefer to do that versus silently patching and then waiting for enough nodes. But there are different scenarios that can play out there as well. On the wallet incident side, we had a few. Monera wallet had one where they were not parsing some specially crafted Coinbase transaction correctly. Lightning Network is still very much in alpha. We see like there's just a stream of vulnerabilities that get published again and again. Amazing find by Open Zeppelin on Argent Wallet, where they had a wallet takeover vulnerability. And then Ledger Live and a few other wallets, they were not processing RBF transactions properly. So RBF is replaced by fee. So basically you can send a transaction and then you can send another transaction with higher fees, so it will replace a previous one. Well, some wallets, they did not process this correctly, so they would show a balance of the initial transaction. So there could be some social engineering attacks there. And then we have supply chain attacks. So this is the real threat to all the node and wallet software. To wallet software, we had the Trinity wallet, and that one was backdoored through a third-party dependency. $1.6 million were stolen. Even worse, it basically shut down the whole network, IOTA, until they figured out like what was actually happening, like how are the attackers stealing the funds, until they narrowed it down, like, oh, okay, so they compromised the actual wallet. And then we had Ravencoin, where someone created an anonymous GitHub account, snuck in a tiny little PR into the code base, which appeared benign. The PR got included in the main code base node software code base, and it basically introduced an inflation bug. Someone could mint arbitrary amounts of Ravencoin. And that was going on basically for 6 months until someone was developing a blockchain explorer, I believe, and they saw like there's some irregularities here. When they started investigating, they saw like, oh, okay, they stole $5 million over the last six months. They've been minting that money and selling them off on exchanges. So they had to go with a very quick emergency patch there. So supply chain attacks, especially, we saw what was happening in more traditional security, where basically everyone got hacked as a result of the was it SolarWinds hack. So it's going to be just as applicable to blockchain security. Silently patching vulnerabilities can backfire. So there's some project like Ethereum, Bitcoin, definitely they tend to do that for critical flaws. What keeps me up at night though is node flaws are still very rare. So if we look at more traditional software, we look at maybe not web browsers, which are getting attacked constantly, but something we consider to be very secure. So you take an operating system like OpenBSD or mobile software like iOS, some super secure web servers, the Nginx or whatever. These get hacked not constantly, but they do get discovered some critical bugs on a fairly regular basis. So we can find the remote code execution. Why are we not seeing similar things in node software? I imagine that there are vulnerabilities like that. They're sitting there. They're just not being discovered or exploited just yet. And the reason for it, I can only guess, is that I'm not sure if there are not enough eyes or interest in pursuing that. People would much rather maybe set up new NFT tokens and profit there, as opposed to writing ODAs for nodes. Let's look at users. So user incidents last year loss around resulted in a loss of $8 million, or billions if you start considering all the scams and Ponzi schemes. So, but we'll focus on just the technical side of it. We're not going to talk about scammers just using cryptocurrencies in their usual schemes. So Ponzi schemes, just in general, like we're talking about billions of losses. So previously I talked about Woe token scam, that was $1 billion. Right now there's Mirror Trading International out of South Africa, that's almost $600 million. Before it was Plus token, that was in the billions, and BitConnect, and on and on. These tend to pop up constantly and result in billions of dollars worth of loss to users. Well, the first scam that I'm going to talk about are crypto giveaway scams. And one second. And that's basically, you know, people are taking over YouTube accounts or taking out ads on Google or tweeting, usually by Elon Musk or SpaceX or Bill Gates or many others. And basically, it's a scheme where they ask you for, send me some money and we'll double it for you. So this has been going on for a while until the big one hit. That was the Twitter hack back in July, where the attackers basically took over hundreds of accounts belonging to first exchanges, then celebrities, corporate accounts. We had Warren Buffett tweeting and saying that, you know, you should send money to this address. The irony of it all was that the total profits were only $120,000, but the damage that was done to Twitter and the overall ecosystem was much larger. It could have been much worse, obviously. On the DeFi scam space, let's zero in on this a little bit. One, there's some more technical targets, like you have people creating basically a copy of MakerDAO websites and completely hooked up with smart contracts, and you know, people were getting phished, like, hey, like, interacted with this website, it looks just like a legitimate MakerDAO, except the contracts that you're interacting are completely different, and you're basically giving all your money to the scammers. Then you had people deploying contracts with hidden backdoors inside them. So that was the Chicken Finance, Axion, Compounder. Others like Unicats, they basically built in an infinite allow back to the scammers. So once enough funds were put into the contract, they basically sweeped it all. And then you have more traditional exit scams and fake tokens. So on the exit scams, there was, you know, the infamous incident with Chef Nomi, who ran off from the project. It goes a little bit deeper than that, so I invite you to read my write-up on it. Blue Kirby with the off blue scam. And then you have, if you're ever interacting with Uniswap, watch out for the multitude of fake LP pairs. So people are just simply setting up token pairs which designed to replicate something real, but it's just some other token that they generated, so it's fake. I'll go through questions towards the end just to make sure I have enough time to cover the material. But on more dangerous user incidents, I previously mentioned the Ledger database leak. Well, that one got a lot worse after all of that data was leaked on the hacker forum. So what this resulted in is, one, just phishing emails, which quickly progressed to phishing text messages, which quickly progressed to people basically getting phone calls demanding ransom from random people. So you can imagine a database of 200,000 or more people's addresses. It can get physical there. So that was one of the worst incidents last year. Backdoored wallets, so Trust Wallets and many other fakes keep showing up on Google Play Store. I'll come back to this one with Harry's epic hack to get the funds back. And the really big one is the Nexus Mutual founder hack, where $8 million were stolen, where a founder was specifically targeted to steal his funds. Normally, attackers deploy wider nets to capture their victims, but in this case, they went for a specific computer, they targeted it, They installed malware on it. They installed backdoored wallet software. And once the user was interacting with the chain, they were able to sweep all the funds. So some insights on user security. We are probably going to see more highly targeted, sophisticated attacks on high net worth individuals, especially now that there's this large database of people who own cryptocurrencies. Technical and non-technical scams are definitely on the rise. PII leaks that we saw from Ledger and many other incidents, they are powering larger and larger phishing campaigns. And these MLM schemes, they'll keep on popping, but we'll just keep seeing them again and again. Okay, so let's talk about the ugly. The ugly are the perpetrators behind all these attacks. Let's discuss who is actually doing this. Like, who are the folks and organizations behind all of this? So if we're talking about bad actors, we can roughly split them up into the following groups. On the right, we have our APTs, so advanced persistent threats. These are the folks that are dedicated. It's probably their full-time jobs doing those things. We have our state-sponsored attackers. We have our financial and ransomware groups. And interestingly, last year, we start seeing dedicated APTs, which are focusing on cryptocurrencies. On the left, we see more individual attackers. We have our black hats, who are just usually individuals, high skills individuals trying to make a profit. We have our script kiddies, usually going after SIM swaps and more low-tech attacks. And of course, the insider threat. So let's break it down. On the nation state side, so these are government-sponsored groups. We have our Lazarus, which is a North Korean group, APT38. And these have been implicated in one exchange hack after another. So QuillCoin that I discussed earlier today was one of those examples. There was actually recently a United States Department of Justice indictment issued for 3 North Korean individuals, which documents in depth all the different schemes that they are involved in. On the other hand, we have Ocean Lotus, which is the Vietnamese-based. Sorry, could someone confirm in the chat if the presentation is now synced up? Okay, I'll keep going, but let me know if I need to restart anything. So we have Ocean Lotus and Wicked Panda. These are Vietnamese and Chinese APT groups, but these are they don't have the same tactics as Lazarus because they are usually just a little bit more subtle. They usually go after infecting machines with malware and just mining cryptocurrency. On the criminal side, for the most part, we have groups which are going after highly profitable ransomware campaigns. So you have your Maze, Netwalker, TA505, Weevil, and so on. So last year, according to Chainalysis, they made about $350 million, so it's fairly profitable enterprise for them. And then, of course, we have the very first dedicated APT called CryptoCore. So if you want to read a Clear Sky report on them, these are the guys that are just razor focused on just targeting cryptocurrency exchanges or related schemes. So we have one of those now. And then we have a script kiddie threat. So the Twitter hack, they were basically caught within days of the attack. So there was part of the OG users group. And they're basically folks in their early 20s, teens, that are just doing silly things and getting caught and going to jail. SIM swapping groups. Then, of course, we have insider threats. So we have an individual that was caught stealing $1 million from Shapeshift. He was one of the employees. Shapeshift is actually kind of interesting. I think they had one or two other insider threat incidents where they hire people who are kind of malicious and end up costing them. Alpha Homora, so Alpha Finance hack, is suspected to be perpetrated by insider because of just the amount of knowledge that was necessary to execute the hack so quickly. The other insider threat is not exactly where there's someone malicious who actively wants to hurt the company. In the case of Kasha, it was pure negligence. The employee was running basically running some operation of the exchange on his personal machine, which was unprotected, got malware on it, and lost all the funds. So it's a different type of insider threat, but insider threat nonetheless. And now the big question is, but who are all those DeFi black hats? Well, we don't know. The closest that we ever got to catching a DeFi hacker was in the DForce hack, where attacker managed to leak their address after they retrieved some content, not from IPFS, but from a web resource directly. After they leaked that, they got their IP address. They got that they were using a Mac computer with EN/US language, system language. So they ended up quickly returning all the stolen funds, and I guess the investigation stopped there. But that was the closest that we got. Then you have a lot of hackers. There's the new trend where they basically send messages to their victims, like on the blockchain in the just a data payload field. Things like, do you really flash loan in value DeFi? Just kind of mocking the project. Covered protocol. It was not a black hat. They returned all the funds, but again, this like with the messages. Next time, take care of your own shit. So if we start thinking about like, who are these people? Some things that we can notice. One is they all have pretty bad OPSEC. You don't see Lazarus messaging their victims, mocking them. They'll just take the money and they'll be too busy washing them and so on. Two, just the skill set involved in executing those DeFi hacks. If these were just criminal groups like we saw before that are currently involved in ransomware, there's a lot easier ways to make money on DeFi. They could create scams, they could create fake LP tokens. Basically, you don't need to go to this level to start making money here. So more likely than not, based on the bad OPSEC, based on high skill set required, these are probably the same high-skilled individuals who are writing those DeFi projects in the first place, who decided for one reason or another to just cross the line and make money with a criminal intent. So the presentation would not be complete without talking about the good folks. These are the people that make this field so exciting and inspiring to write about. That's what keeps it going. So the folks that are the good guys out there, one is, if you saw in the DeFi space, I mentioned that about half of the incidents were prevented because white hats were reporting those vulnerabilities ahead of time. They were actively seeking them out and helping developers patch them. So one such white hack is Sam CZ-Sun, who helped 18 different projects last year to get patched, helped them fix vulnerabilities. In one incident, he helped them execute the hack to save $9.6 million. He also shares his knowledge with the industry by publishing blogs. He recently organized Paradigm CTF, which I highly recommend if you want to go over solutions and play yourself. To share, all of this is used to uplift the industry and learn more about DeFi security. So applause to him. Harry Danley is another sheriff in the lawless crypto frontier. So Harry Danley, like if you look at his Twitter and blog posts, he's been on this for years. He's been helping shut down phishing and malware campaigns one after another. It's kind of a thankless job. Like the second you knock them out, they pop up in a new place. Well, this time in 2020, Harry kind of took things into his own hands, where he saw that the phishers who were running the fake trust wallet scam, they were not operating the infrastructure well enough, and they were leaking all of the private keys that they stole from others. So he was able to scrape off the list of all the different private keys, steal the money from the hackers, and then return them to their rightful users. So same story happened with fake Uniswap and Balancer phishing campaigns, where he was able to save another $10,000 from the bad guys. Harry also runs a bunch of projects like Crypto Phishing Bot, Crypto Scam DB. All of them are used by the community in order to help detect scams and phishing attacks. Sometimes it requires a whole team to make impact on this field. So there are a lot of teams out there, like Open Zeppelin. They're publishing their contracts database, which are basically the de facto way to write smart contracts. Trail of Bits, Peck Shield, publishing analysis. One such team which made amazing contribution last year is Consensus Diligence, which published just so many amazing tools free of charge to the community. Scribble, Tea Time, Legions, blockchain security database, and just a barrage of super useful VS Code extensions if you're a smart code auditor. So check them out. There are many more heroes, and you know who you are. And I proudly write about you, and it's a privilege to write about you and your stories and your struggles in my newsletter. And we're all in this together. We're all building this new frontier, and there are it will take thousands of developers, security engineers, entrepreneurs to be able to secure this field. Blockchain security is still very young and barely explored, just like the cryptocurrency ecosystem is trying to protect in the first place. So if you're looking to contribute, imagine there are a few things that you can do. One is we're severely lacking in guidelines, testing methodology, and tools. So pick your choice. So if you want to write tools to secure standalone blockchains, fuzzers, look at node configuration operation. If you have cryptography background, you can try to lock down the whole hot and cold storage, key management protocols. There's a lot. If you're more with the investigator side, you can dive into blockchain forensics and try to hunt down the bad guys, and so on. If you would like to share educational resources, organize CTF competitions, trainings, and if you just want to go full-time into this field, there are more and more places where you can become a full-time security professional looking at blockchain security issues. Try to explore different bug bounties out there, or start your consulting company. There's definitely a need for that. Some things to get started. I would recommend, selfishly, look at my newsletter. I try to outline all the new resources as they keep on popping up, and on a weekly basis, there's a lot. There's another project that I started recently called Open BlockSec, where blockchain threat intelligence is more, it changes constantly. Open BlockSec aims to create curated lists where I document just really solid resources that you can reference any given time. So for now, I just have one resource that I made public, which is just a list of all the capture the flag competitions and all the solutions that I could find as well. But in the future, I'm adding like just high quality talks, resources, and so on. So that's all, folks. Consider joining the good fight. Become a security engineer. If you have a background in web AppSec and you're just sick of looking for XSS and SQL injection vulns over and over again, dive into DeFi, dive into BlockSec. There's just untapped, unexplored field for you to look at. If you're an investigator and you like catching fraudsters, consider blockchain forensic analysis. If you're just a developer and you're looking for a new project, this is the field for you. Thank you. And now I'll scroll through the questions and see if I can catch up quickly. Or feel free to post questions in the chat and I'll respond to them live.
Okay, so one question is from someone is asking, can you please tell practical how Ponzi scam works so we improve our securities?
How Ponzi scams are what?
How Ponzi scam works so we improve our securities.
Well, Ponzi scams, they go after the human element, right? They explore the human security. So I think education is one, teaching people that like there's no such thing as free lunch, even though it seems like that sometimes in the last few months. Just education, knowing how to rate and distinguish legitimate projects from illegitimate ones. So that's maybe some kind of, like, there are a few projects like DeFi Safety. They try to basically outline, rate different projects, saying like, hey, this is probably safe, this is probably a scam. So we probably need that for a lot more different projects out there. Any other questions? Okay,
I think
well,
we don't have questions here. I think this one already has been answered. I will just repeat it again. It's like, how does reversing transactions affect the trust and immutability of blockchain?
well, I mean, the only way to, I guess, the approach to reversing transactions, and that was actively discussed in the Binance hack a few years ago. If you actively collaborate with miners, you would be able to override some blocks in the past. But that's highly frowned upon proposition, because the whole concept of blockchains and decentralized ledgers is that, like, we shouldn't be doing stuff like that just because it's possible. And I discussed one coin that did that. They froze an account, they forced a transaction to compensate. So it's possible. 51% attacks are what can be used for that, but it's definitely not something that should be done or taken lightly, because it undermines the whole foundation behind this field.
Okay, people are asking for your social medias to connect you with.
Sure. I guess if you just, the best one would be my Twitter, if you want to reach out. Let me see. I think I have it on one of the slides. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, you're welcome to contact me on Twitter. It's just _iFelix. Career development tips. Try learning, try playing competitions like Ethernaut or Paradigm CTF that I mentioned. There's a huge shortage of professionals. If you want to pursue this field, and you should, it's a lot of fun, and there's just high demand for people who are knowledgeable about this, because we're all still just learning. So it's good to get in now and learn together, as we all do. Just read a lot, read the newsletter, participate in competitions, and just be on the lookout. Unfortunately, there's no like solid book that you can buy that will give you everything you need to know about blockchain security. So you can start with just the basics, get your mastering Bitcoin, mastering Ethereum, and just go from there. Okay, well, folks, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk with you about blockchain security and other career development and other tips. And super excited about the conference. This is first of a kind, dedicated blockchain security conference. Excited to see more of us. Thank you.